you're going to allow life to buff you a little bit, how life to train you, how to be consistent, how to be resilient, how to stick, get some stick-to-itiveness. So that's one of the things I wish, if I could do it over again, I wouldn't exercise perfection in the language that I use, right? I would exercise growth in the language that I use. You're gonna go through this. Welcome to Leadership Sovereignty, the podcast. I'm your host, Terry Baylor, along with Ralph Owens. And today, along with Philip Yates, we unpack the power of failing forward, the spiritual blueprint for entrepreneurship, and what it really means to develop the next generation of leaders. It's about faith, resilience, and the freedom to grow. Enjoy the show. God placed that in me, and I'm looking at what we're doing today. It's essentially the same thing, right?
Yeah.
And so to that end, though, the one thing, Phil, I would add to that is, in our communities, right? I'm sure you've heard this before, and I'm going to try to frame this the best possible way, because I do want to be authentic to our message and our story and who we are. I'm just going to make this statement, and you're going to know what I mean. You got to be 10 times better.
Yeah.
Because of what you want to do, because of where you're going, right? Phil, I'm sure you've heard that, especially in what you're doing. You got to be 10 times better. Absolutely. Right? Yeah. And so I believe I would probably not use that message, because what I believe that message does is it doesn't give us as parents and our kids the ability to fall forward, to fail and learn. And so, Ralph, to your point, right, we lead with scripture, man. And I've been just on Psalm 37 like every day. It's just been so rich on so many levels, right? Because, Phil, to your point, in that text, it really talks about being an entrepreneur, because it talks about you're going to lend freely to people. So that means if I'm lending freely, I'm pretty sure I'm not working for somebody else. If I'm lending freely, right, to people to help them out, that means my source is got to be large if I'm lending freely to people. The other aspect of what that text talks about is that you may stumble, but you won't fall, right? So that means I may hit some hiccups in the road. And so visually, when I see that in my head and feel you're kind of there, right? You're walking with your daughter, holding her hand. When she trips, you know how we would kind of let them stumble a little bit, but we're like, oh, nope, you're not gonna hit the ground, though. That's how I see. I'm gonna let you live out life. You're gonna allow life to buff you a little bit, how life to train you, how to be consistent, how to be resilient, how to stick, get some stick-to-itiveness. So that's one of the things I wish, if I could do it over again, I wouldn't exercise perfection in the language that I use, right? I would exercise growth in the language that I use. You're gonna go through this, You're going to experience this. So my oldest son just graduated last night, and that essentially, thank you, I appreciate it. So he's on his way to Houston Christian here in town. So I'm super excited about that for him, and God blessed him. He put in the work, right? So he's got an academic scholarship there. So super excited. But I wish I would have allowed them to fail freely a little more, without the expectation of, you get that one bad grade and man, we coming down. How it is. So, and because here's the big
for you to get that good.
Exactly. You know how it is. Exactly. And so, so what happens, but to your earlier point, right? I believe what that does is it limits their appetite for risk. Because if we want them to be entrepreneurs, you have to be okay. You got to be okay with the no. And I just had a conversation with Ralph yesterday. Ralph, I'm getting through my 100 no's so I can get my 20 yes.
That's right. That's right. That's right. And you know what? Let me add this one point onto that too. So when you, and this is no indictment on our parents' generation, right? Most of us economically, they were not in a place to try to develop that gift.
Yes.
Right. You know what I'm saying? They didn't have the capacity to do it. Right. They were just focused on trying to get by, day by day and get a little bit better. Right. I think we are, in our generation, we're in a unique position where we have the capacity to not only to discover and to develop, but to get them off into, adulthood in their purpose, right? So that they can take it and take it to a whole nother level. Most of us have had to, once we got out into the workforce, rediscover, in ourselves, what is our passion? Right?
Yeah.
What were we created? Like, I'll give you a quick example. For me, when I was a kid, VCRs were just coming out. Nobody in my family could figure out how to put these VCRs together, right? How to connect them and stuff. I was a kid. They were like, "Hey, can you bring him over so he can connect this up?" My mind just automatically just understood how that stuff worked. I had a computer at 13 writing code, right? That people don't even know what this stuff is at this point. My mind just automatically figured it out, right? So I go to the Navy after high school, to serve. I'm a welder. I absolutely hate it. I'm like, I got to get back to technology. That's what I like to do. Had computer parts all over the place in the house, trying to figure out how to put computers together, right? Because that's just what I was passionate about. Fast forward now 27 years, I'm the CIO of a bank, right? And it all tied back to what my original passion was, right? So if you can figure out what it is that they're naturally passionate about and then develop it and get them on the right track, man, they'll take off in life.
Yeah, that's a lot to unpack. I want you to know you guys just kind of broke down at least 2 or 3 more episodes with your guests, because now I think of our greatest responsibility. It's to be, one is to be a good human. The other one is to raise good humans. And you guys kind of laid out a blueprint for that. And we talked about discover, develop, and obviously I think scripture is universal, right? There's some people, even if they're agnostic or they don't believe in anybody,
Yeah.
even then they still have a code in terms of how to be a good human being.
Yes.
Right.
And my household similar to y'all's, and I thank God that I found my wife, because she makes sure that I maintain my responsibility as man, and her as woman, as mother and father. But the piece I kind of want to summarize that last piece, because it goes into our conversation as what our leadership development is: invest, right? Discover, develop, and invest. And so I always tell people, growing up, one, to your point, I did look at my brother and my sister, and it's like they did great things. And my brother, he transitioned, but my sister's doing well. And there's not big gaps and deficits, but in terms of my journey in life, I was invested in and say, hey, you're going to be a leader. Hey, you're going to be an attorney. Hey, you can do this. And even to this day, because of what was invested in me, I'm still, ascending in my journey, and thankful to my village and obviously to God for that. But you also had the scarcity mindset. You didn't have
Yes.
And so, obviously we talked about our parents' generation where they had to work, they wanted to keep us safe, and they wanted to keep food on the table and get you.
Right.
I tell myself, they wouldn't just get you out of high school and go to college.
Right.
Like, that was the finish line. Go to college.
Yes.
Or go
Yes.
to the military. It's like, it was one of the things, but don't go to jail, don't sell drugs, don't die.
That's right.
Exactly.
That's right.
Exactly. And no kids.
And no kids.
And no kids. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
That's not the case today because of this new economy. It's like you do have to discover what somebody's skill set is. You do have to develop it. And I love you said allow them to fail early, because it's almost like, and I told you guys my kids are in Montessori. I love the fact that they do it in 3-year blocks, if you guys are familiar with the Montessori system. And so like pre-K is 3 years, or in kindergarten 3 years, and then they go to lower L. So my kid, he just graduated from kindergarten. Now he's going to be with third graders. And so you talk about your story of leading younger kids to a state championship. Well, that's what they're teaching automatically. So I love the fact that my daughter, she's already going to her 3rd year in lower L, but I remember how scared and frightened she was as a 1st grader, but they're teaching her how to follow the 2nd grader. And the second and third graders learn how to lead the second and first grade. So by the time my daughter's in third grade, she now knows how to be a leader. And I think that's invaluable. And I don't think you can only learn that in Montessori. You can learn that in church, you can learn that at home, you can learn that in your village.
Sure.
And so this conversation is so crucial because of what just the platform. Obviously, one, scripture is still the playbook. It's in there.
Yes.
I mean, I tell people,
that's right.
Say, what's your favorite book? I say Book of James. They'd be like, what do you mean? Like, no, go to the Book of James. It's about 5 pages, and it teaches you how to be an ideal human being, all the way from being an entrepreneur to being a good steward to following God. And I say, Jesus' brother wrote it, so I'm a little biased.
Yeah, there you go.
But I think that's what we have to do when we talk about breaking through the new glass ceiling. It's not about entering into an institution and then following their instruction because they've changed the rules. And it's their right. Because it's their rules. Now, as Terry stated about the box, you create your own rules for your environment. And if you just happen to go to the military, go to college, join a job, do it on your own terms. And you have to have a playbook. But us as leaders of our house or our community or our jobs, we have to give the tools and resources for those people to actually develop into what God's purpose for them. So I love it, gentlemen. I just think, God, that's a lot to unpack. And that's what to summarize. And thank you for that advice, because I'm telling my wife about it later, and we'll rock and roll.
Perfect. So I want to add one thing, James, to what you said. So I was in a leadership conversation, and I was amazed to hear this. I believe it was Jeff Bezos, if I'm not mistaken. And just so, we, again, to your point, or Ralph, to your point, we use scripture as a basis, right? But we also believe that these concepts are universal, human, just people concepts that it's like math, right? It works in the universe. No matter what you think about algebra, algebra is going to get you through the universe. It's just how it works, right? And so many different disciplines, algebra applies, right? So the Bible is the same way. And so what really, so just to emphasize that, I believe it was Jeff Bezos. And they said what Jeff Bezos does is he doesn't create his yearly plan based on from A to Z. He basically starts at the end, right? What does the end look like?
Yeah.
Now, this is going to sound like somebody who works your life from the end, right? He creates from the end result. So Jeff Bezos creates from the end result, and then he says, this is what I want it to look like. And then he goes back to the beginning and says, okay, these are all the things that have to happen in order for it to look like what I designed it to be. Yeah. Right? That's a godly principle.
Right. That's right. Start with the end in mind. Yeah.
And start with the end in mind. So anyway, if anybody who was like, oh man, I don't know, these guys, they just Bible lovers. Yeah, we are. But we have look, I've heard of millionaires, billionaires who basically say, hey, I'm going to give 10% to this. And they do it as a principle. They're not doing it from a biblical standpoint, but it's a principle. And because they exercise that principle, they are receiving a blessing, because again, it's just one of those things that's universal, man, in the universe. So
thank you for listening to the Leadership Sovereignty Podcast. If this content blessed or helped you in any kind of way, support us today by subscribing to our YouTube channel, clicking the like button for this episode, and sharing this content with others that you think it will help. Until next time, stay safe, peace, and blessings.